Yes, please. You have to clap a lot, Ivana. Molit ću te lijepo. Najbitnije. Radi ovaj mikrofon. Dobrodošli u ovom vrijednom broju. So, welcome. Welcome to the lecture of the real change. From the world of hyper to the world of no connectivity in the same 21st century, developing rampantly on the same planet. So, if this no connectivity nightmare would be a reality in Croatia, we wouldn't be having this conference right now, and we wouldn't be having the whole industry. Impossible, you say? Well, not at all. Let me introduce you to my nightmare, rampantly becoming a reality in the increasing number of countries. So, this is my nightmare. And what is it? So we have different names for it. It's called internet shutdown, blackout, or kill switch. So we have a main definition, which is a like definition. That means that somebody is intentionally cutting you off. That somebody is usually a government. You have a technical definition here as well. But the most important thing to know is that internet shutdowns are a huge threat to everyone. So we are talking about threats to businesses, emergency services, journalists, human rights defenders, and demonstrations. They don't help victims, they don't help anyone except governments to getting re-elected. And this is our reality in so many countries now, when they are just shutting down the internet 6 months before the election, and when they are re-elected again, where their political opponents didn't have anything to say. I mean, they had, but nobody was listening to them because they didn't have means of communication. Then we have internet again. So where you can follow this amazing trend is using hashtag keep it on. Best source, So best source is NGO Access Now, and they already have, they also have developed this graph that I already show you at the beginning. So we can see from this graph how much is this trend increasing. So I don't have to read you the numbers, but just to see that from 2016 in the whole year, we have more shutdowns in just first half of this year. Mostly documented shutdowns have been in 2016, and up to 2017 we can see here that Asia is at the forefront. Absolute champion in shutdown was Cameroon with 230 days of no internet. How did they solve? They even have an internet refugees camp. So if you're thinking, you know, how cool would it be to travel 1 hour to work to have internet connection in some place where enthusiasts have meshed up or figure out how to stay online, this is how they did it. Now, we have many excuses the governments are usually using, and as I already told you, my favorite is none. I won't tell you. But at least I would rather that somebody is saying none than insulting my intelligence is saying, well, this is for your own good. I hate this one. It's for your own good. Or like, okay, usually they're shutting down the protests, stopping rumors, mind you. So you want to win an election and you want to stop rumors, somebody telling bad things about you, of course. And illegal content that is usually not well defined, as we are having case right now in Europe. School exams, this is also one of my favorites. Morocco did that recently, and a few other countries like, okay, now we have school exams, very important, but we just have to shut down the internet so the kids cannot cheat on their exams. That's cool one. So we have all those variety of reasons, or not giving a reasons. And what is interesting here, people are usually saying, well, it cannot happen to us because we are so highly connected and we are developing digital economy. Wrong. You would say that this can happen in some countries of poor connection or poor democracy, but countries which are by definition democratic, that means that they have election, at least they are pretending to somewhat be democratic, and having highly developed digital economy, like India. India had 70% of all known shutdowns last year. Yeah? And Ethiopia, which is the fastest growing African economy, has been doing very well also in its own right, shutting down the whole regions during the demonstrations. Okay, now how do we know how much is that harming our economies? So how do we measure the cost? The Internet Society and NetBlock have teamed up to develop a tool which is called Cost of Shutdown tool or cost, and they will be enabling with this tool everyone to quickly and easily estimate the economic cost of internet disruptions. We already have been testing this tool on several digital rights conferences, and now it's already operational in sub-Saharan region where we have the most of shutdowns. And I've been talking to guys from Internet Society and NetBlocks recently that told me it will be fully operational at the end of this year. Methodology used was built around by methodology devised by Brookings Institution, and you can read here what kind of indicators and what kind of sources of data they are using, and also they will in the future be able to mean a secondary impact. So as already is proposed in case for sub-Saharan Africa. Now, dling, money. How much does it really cost? Now, we really have staggering numbers here. Now, we are talking about totally suffocating the whole economies. So you can see here 81 shutdowns between July 2015 and June 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, $2.4 billion only in that period. And using the same methodology, the Indian think tank has come with the number of 3 billion between 2012 and 2017. This is a very famous little graph, and it's used widely by internet activists like me to advocate for freedom of internet to remain open, freedom of internet to remain open. So now we are coming back to this dogma saying, no, but like, you know, how they cannot possibly do that in highly connected countries. Yes, they can, and yes, they have been doing so. And this is the number of economic damage for a day in its estimated GDP impact for 10 million people. Here we have different numbers, whether there is about countries with high connectivity, medium, and low levels of connectivity. And again, it is not totally weird seeing that countries who are putting a lot of effort into developing digital economy and talking about it in the same time when they feel, okay, well, now I really have to win those elections, that they are behaving differently and shutting them down. This is slide from Internet Society. So what can we do? What are the shutdowns, or what can we do about them? And they develop a whole set of recommendations for everybody who is in that process. So we have recommendations for governments, and let's say having a reasonable assumption that government is not here only to win the elections, but at least while they're at governance, not to suffocate and kill everybody economically. They are advised to do cost-benefit analysis, impact analysis. That should be kind of basic, usually when you're doing policy work. And think twice. How much does that cost the whole nation? And also to put in consideration, this is also very important for, at least it should be, in developing world, to reflect shutdown's consideration in aid policies, because there is also, when you're giving aid to some country, you are counting on their ability to pay it back in a way that they will be actually stimulating their own internal economy, not shutting it down. Ivan, are you taking pictures? No, with my own phone. Eto, čekaj, moram tega otvoriti. Vidim, ja, leni mi je nešto, ono. Eto, još malo. So now, what you think that it doesn't need to be said when we're talking about government influence in these policies is, please, dear government, can you please obey your own laws? Can you, rule of law is such an amazing word. It actually has great significance in the world of modern governance, but we see it, and this is not Africa, this is not countries where we say they have low democracy. We see it now in Europe, that just the governments and institutions, they not only that they are not obeying, let's say, a human charter of human rights or UN recommendations or some international recommendations of law, they are not obeying their own law. And so, that being said, what we also ask for businesses is to, again, remind governments when they're coming with certain requirements, and say, like, you need to shut down, and say, excuse me, but this is illegal. You have no right to do so, just because, but okay, they have this amazing advantage of having guys with guns, they usually call them police or army, so sometimes it's very hard to negotiate with that, especially when it's so blatant in certain countries. But what we have in so developed democracy is they're eating us alive with the complexity of laws and actually disobeying their own law, hoping that nobody will figure it out. And when we figure it out, say this is not right, it's just a matter that very few people are listening to you, or actually saying, no, I'm not going to consent to this because it's illegal. Now, what is super important for me as an activist and as a professional is how is that going to impact SMEs? When we are talking about SMEs, we are talking about backbone of worlds, and especially European economy. I don't know if you know, but 86% of European jobs is in this sector. So it's not that big corporates are giving us jobs. Yes, they are providing few percent of European jobs and paying very little taxes while they're at it. So their contribution, okay, it is a contribution, but it's a very unproportional one, having in mind what amount of contribution is here in for GDP, for the job creation, and for the tax payment. And the voice of SMEs is now not being heard. Oh my God, I have 5 minutes. Oh, okay. Recommendations for technical community is to build resilient infrastructure. Definitely we need to mesh. We have to develop technical innovation, but not be, please don't be blinded by that. This is not the only way to go, because this needs to scale, this needs to be supported, and if you're doing that in a police state, it's super difficult. For civil society, we have to be more active. We have to be more active as a watchdog and expand advocacy, especially in area for businesses. And the problem is, like in Croatia, I am the only digital rights activist, thank you very much. This is not a great position to be in. And I'm volunteering for the last year, using my own money and using my own resources just in order to be able to do what I was doing here, and which is super important now, the copyright reform. This is going to damage hugely European internet, and it's going to create an internet in which only Google and Facebook can survive. So even though they've been lobbying both sides, because it's not very good for them that they have a directive that is going to kill the whole internet because it's killing the whole ecosystem, at the end they're the only one that are having technology to survive that. So now we are in middle of trialogues, and now we are just refining the damage there. So now we know that, that internet companies are coerced into monitoring, filtering, and blocking, but there will be now more explicitly explained how is this going to be done. So clarity, this is what we are missing now, especially for a link text and also for a copyright directive. So we are expecting from trialogues now not to diminish the damage, which is huge, and this is a really huge magnitude of the damage that will cause to the internet, but just to make it clear enough that it's going to be workable. I'm so fast. Article 11, neighboring rights, link tags, you will not be able to share snippets or possibly even links. That will depend on the final text to see how they are going to treat the links for non-commercial usage. Believe me, it's a nightmare. I've been doing that for a whole year, nothing else by that. Article 13 makes content sharing services providers responsible for the content of their services. So even though it's not de jure demanded, de facto they will not have any other possibility but to demand filtering of everything. And those filters are very inaccurate. They are creating a huge, enormous amount of mistakes because they cannot recognize exemptions. I mean, bot cannot understand the context. They cannot understand quotation. They cannot understand parody. This is why this law is being known as a law that is going to kill the memes, because it will. Because bot is asking for absolute originality, and meme cannot be absolutely original when there is something, some picture on which you paste something of which is of the funny content. Okay, so I think for this is enough to create a Chinese internet in Europe. But in addition to that, we have, so we have a regulation of preventing terrorist content online, and it asks companies to remove, without, of course, defining what terrorism is, it demands 1 hour takedown. Now, the worst possible thing, a net neutrality nightmare. Now we have new information that this is going to be a new battle for Europe next year. Americans are fighting that for last year very dramatically and with very low impact, but they are very, very eager in doing so. Now, the most important thing, and this is my last slide, who is going to pay for this cost? Who is going to prevent? What we have a problem here, SMEs are not one lobbying body. So there is so many stakeholders which are all over the place. And one Google and Facebook and Amazon, they have a bunch of lawyers and a bunch of lobbyists, and they have one boss, and they say, okay, this is our clear policy, and they lobby for that. How do we lobby for the rest of the people to stay in business? So I don't know. This is what I'm asking you. I'm really hoping that ICT community will understand that no, you cannot have a blockchain if you don't have an internet. No, you cannot have a digital business if you don't have digital. So I don't see it coming, but I'm willing to put my energy forward in figuring the ways and business models, how actually to incentivize this network, how to connect all those dispersed stakeholders into, I wouldn't say one voice, but at least in voice of reason that will say, okay, let's obey the law, let's obey the basic human rights chapter, which is saying that freedom to express and freedom to exchange and freedom to run a business, it's a basic human right. And so this is the moment of democracy in Europe in which we are now. To conclude, and I'm so sorry that Marianne is not here, my worst fear, she was talking about fears, it's to be left alone in the dark. And this is what I feel that is going to happen when we are offline. And people are saying, yeah, like, talk to people too. Where are those people? We are not living in very network, small villages where everybody knows everybody. We don't have big corporate and not hiring so many people as before. We have less and less. So our physical society has been engineered in a way to conduct loneliness. And now we are connecting with amazing people, amazing businesses around the world. All this is now at stake. So when she said, what is your worst fear? My worst fear is to be left alone in the dark. And being left without all those amazing connecting and business opportunities. And just so this is how I see that my purpose and my life mission is figuring out how to prevent it from happening, and even if it sounds like a first world problem, how at least to prevent it happening to me. And we have resources now. We are still not in a war zone. We are not in the famine. We still have basic democracy in Croatia. It's not very good, but we don't have policemen putting you in prison if you say something and nobody's still torturing us. So I believe that some action can be done for future, for SMEs and for all of us to advocate our right to stay online, and not to be this right be defended only by a bunch of digital right activists who are, I don't know, usually they've been focused mostly on privacy. So like for the last 15 years, you have usual suspects and you have few of those geeks who are just like, afraid that somebody will that somebody is spying upon them, which is fair enough. But now those people, they cannot fight with all this complexity of situation that is in front of us. This is why we need businesses to support us. And just a really last one. In the last Digital Right conference in Brussels, freedom, not fear, a lot of fear being mentioned around everywhere. We actually had a workshop for the first time, how to continue with digital right activism and remain sane. And this is because this year when we gathered, it was like, okay, everything that we could possibly lost, we lost. The major fight was the copyright reform. For that, I work almost 8 hours every day for almost a year. And seeing it happen totally against recommendation, against the will of the copyright experts. So we had academia on our side, we had SMEs, we had startups, we had Internet Illuminati, we had human rights organizations, we had the UN rapporteur for human rights saying this is okay. And then they are just, and you see that MEPs actually haven't researched into that file well, and that some lobbying industry has just came up with few emotional statements how this is going to damage authors, which is false, because they will not get additional money. That's absolutely false. Big companies might. Now, okay, I think that I better stop here and maybe let you say something if you have time, or don't we? And I'm just going to give you a mic now.
Thank you, Leina. Please go. I think you brought a bit of awareness of the problem. I'm not sure we all understand in this much depth. Yeah. So if there's questions, we have a few minutes, but we need to start in 2 minutes with the next speak. So.
Okay.
Questions?
Come on.
Thank you. It was really interesting to hear about it. I didn't know even that this was happening. So my question is, are we in Croatia, should be in fear that something like this can happen to us, the internet shutdown? And if not, do you maybe have some data about some different, less blatant shutdowns or censures happening?
Here in Croatia, or?
Yes.
Now they are here. So now they are here. Now they are here. Now you came. And what about my lecture? I cannot believe this. Can you have a picture now? It will look actually like they all came for my lecture. Yes, please do that. Please do that. Good. So this is to come again that Croatia is not the worst place in the universe. Actually, having that in mind, we are enjoying great rights now, because none of them is happening in Croatia yet. But what we are having now on the EU level is exactly that. So copyright reform or a breach of net neutrality on anti-terrorist directives, now only the copyright reform now that is supposed to transform EU into Chinese internet is going to be negotiated now in few months into implementation into Croatian legislation. And that can possibly mean end for bloggers or YouTubers, and many horrible things can potentially happen to average user of the net. I don't see it coming yet, that Croatian government will say, now I will block it. But Croatian government also haven't done much to ease the pressure that was created by a lobbyist of offline media that want to sell more newspapers. Okay, that was a heavy pressure, so it was hard to resist it. But what I expect in Croatia, that they will be following blindly whatever big member states and their lobbyists are saying, and that will eventually come back harming Croatian citizens and Croatian businesses. I don't see them that they will say, like for example, Netherlands, it was saying no. Slovenia was very skeptical, and the Netherlands is the first country in Europe that has created net neutrality. So like Slovenia is second. So there are certain countries that will have perspective. There I can say I can have a reasonable assumption that even though they will be put in a situation to implement very bad decisions from the EU level, they will say, no, 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 thank you, we will fight this. I don't see Croatia doing that. However, I don't see policemen in Croatia going around people's houses and shutting down anything yet. So yeah, did you have a picture with me with all this crowd? Yes, all this crowd. Yes, good. Good.
Sorry, I have to interrupt now because we need to keep the schedule. If you want to talk to Leina, you can catch her in the lobby and also contact her if you want to help her. So I'm sorry, but we have to be very quick.